What up, guys? My name is Hutch. I make videos and I put them on the internet. And I know I haven't posted in like 4 or 5 days, but I've just been slightly occupied, you could say, emotionally and psychologically, with the midterm elections that just happened a couple days ago. And then the immediate fallout of the midterms yesterday was pretty wild too. But on that topic, I wanted to take an opportunity today to have a conversation with you guys about how I became interested in politics in the first place. Because contrary to what some people think, it didn't happen in 2015, and it didn't happen because of Donald Trump. The story is a little bit longer and more complicated than that. And I just find this topic interesting, and I don't know if I've ever told you guys this reason, so I figured, yeah, what, fuck it, let's talk about it. So I grew up pretty insulated. I had a very sheltered upbringing. I grew up in a, relatively quiet suburb of San Francisco. There wasn't a whole lot of politics in my house. We didn't discuss history very much or anything like that. But there was quite a bit of patriotism. We had a giant American flag. My father was a Vietnam veteran and a police officer for many, many years. But one thing we didn't really discuss all that much, if ever, I think, was history or politics. It just never came up. And so by the time 2001 came around, and I'm a freshman in college living in the dorms, I wake up one morning to my roommate, my high school buddy, wakes me up and says, "Hutch, wake up, the terrorists are bombing us," or something like that. I can't remember what he said exactly. It was like 6 in the morning or something. And so I walk out into the common area, and I see footage of the Twin Towers in New York City on fire, and then eventually the collapse of these buildings. And I didn't quite understand in that moment the effect that this event was going to have on my life and the way that I looked at the world. In fact, I remember watching the news and hearing people talk about how everything was going to be completely different after this, and I was thinking to myself, well, I don't really understand that. What is this change? Because I had no real concept of history yet. And so one thing that did happen as a result of that attack was that I became very curious as to why it happened in the first place. Because when I turned on the TV and I listened to our president at the time, the reasons that he was giving were that simply they just hate our freedom. And I thought, well, there's got to be something more to it than that, right? Like they can't just be that. But that was the narrative that was spun exclusively for like 2 years. And around the same time, I took my first intro to sociology course. I originally was a business administration major. I thought I was going to do something with a concentration in marketing. I really thought I was going to be, I thought that I wanted my goal to be to create effective advertising, maybe do commercials or something like that. That was my original goal. And then things kind of changed for me that first year. I took this intro to sociology course, and then they had us reading about times in American history that I was never taught about in my 12 years of private Catholic schooling leading up to college. I learned about the Trail of Tears and about the treatment of indigenous people in this country and what really happened when we first started coming over and colonizing this continent. And it really kind of shook me. I had heard about these things, but not in very much detail before, but it was quite another thing to learn about these things in great detail. And it really shifted my perspective. So I ended up just devouring every history book I could find. The internet was a thing back then, and smartphones with internet, I think, did start to exist around that time. But for the most part, I was doing a lot more actual reading of physical books back then. And now, if you want to read a book, you just go on the iTunes store, or the iBook store, or whatever, the Kindle store, and you can download them in literally seconds. And back then, if you wanted to, if you got curious about something, you had to walk to a bookstore or a library to get the information that you were looking for. And so, I just started devouring every book that I could find, and at the same time, I was also switching my major to sociology, and I got introduced to Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States. They talk about that book, or they reference that book in Good Will Hunting, if you've ever seen that movie. They talk about Zen and Chomsky. And reading that book really, really, really sparked a dramatic shift in me. And I felt a little angry and upset because it felt like I had been lied to. And if I would have known the things that I was learning back in grade school, then maybe I would have had a totally different perspective. Like, I just didn't really think about the world around me all that much. And at a certain age, that fact just started to bother me. It bothered me that when I thought about my life leading up, and it didn't matter that I was a kid, and I was being too hard on myself at that time, but it really bothered me that I didn't really think about other people all that much, and I was profoundly ignorant, and I really didn't understand very much about United States history or just kind of history in general. Like, I couldn't have really told you that. I just didn't really know a whole lot, and that bothered me. Like, I started to think about that, and I'm like, man, if I'm that ignorant, I feel like it would be really easy for people to take advantage of me at some point. And the older I got, the more I started to understand that if people can take advantage of you, if people can take advantage of your ignorance, more than likely they will at some point. There's a lot of people, not everybody would do that, but there's a lot of people that will use that to their advantage. And I didn't want to be that person. And so I was consumed with this fear of being stupid and ignorant. And so I really just started jumping in at that point and just devouring every book that I could find. If you guys think that I'm liberal now on Twitter, oh my God, you should have seen me in college. It was like, it was to a much, much more extreme degree than it is now. It was really hard for me to have civil conversations with people back then, and I felt super strongly about things, especially during the run-up to the war in Iraq. There was a period of 1 or 2 years where my mind was constantly on that war. I mean, every single day for 1 or 2 years, I was thinking about the bombs being dropped over there. I was thinking about not only American soldiers that were dying over there, but the innocent civilians that were dying over there. And it really consumed me. And then something really unfortunate happened in, I think, 2005 or 2006. I lost one of my best friends in an IED attack in, I can't remember what city in Iraq, but he was an Army Ranger serving over there, and he unfortunately passed away. And that really, that's something that shook me to my core too. And it really only further emboldened me to continue my pursuit of trying to figure out why people are the way that they are and why the world is the way that it is. And those issues alone just became so important for me to try to understand and figure out. I ended up taking quite a bit of time away from paying attention to politics, like right around the time that I started to build a YouTube channel and teach myself how to edit and really get into Call of Duty, because I had spent the last, probably 4 or 5 years just really emotionally invested in the stuff that I've been talking about before, but I had friends and I was like, I could meet girls and stuff like that, but I wasn't letting myself enjoy my life enough. And so I decided to make a conscious effort to take a step back from that. And that's when I built up a YouTube channel, got a job at Machinima and quit, and then came back and started working from home. And then 2015 came along. There were things that popped up every now and then that piqued my attention and curiosity. Like, I remember the Stop Online Piracy Act. They called it SOPA. That was about to be passed at one point. It got really close to being, the FCC got really close to passing it, I believe, or it might have been Congress, but it would have had a direct impact on my job. And then the Occupy Wall Street stuff came up, and I was really fascinated with that, even though it fizzled out after like a month and a half. It was like the closest that I had seen to what my parents had experienced in like the 60s and 70s at the height of the anti-war movement. And I had hopes that maybe that movement could be something like a culturally defining moment for this generation. It ended up not being the case, but so like miscellaneous things would pop up and I would become interested, but I wasn't very invested. And then 2015 came along, and you saw the Republican primaries and the Democratic primaries. And I'd never owned cable in my adult life, but I bought a cable package just so I could watch all the debates and the media coverage, and then it really kind of kicked back up for me. That curiosity just really kicked back up for me, and I think I just felt this really strong sense of urgency about it. And so here I am now, like, and I'm grappling with the idea that, like, I'm probably spending too much time these days, and I've made it a goal after these midterms to spend more time on things that are more productive for me or more beneficial for me or healthy for me. Maybe start like pay a personal trainer and like take like if I'm spending 3 hours checking the news on Twitter today, then how much better would my life be tomorrow if I spent 2.5 of those hours maybe pay a personal trainer or a nutrition or something and get a diet plan and actually start to get physically healthier. And there's a number of other things that I could be spending my time on that aren't just being totally invested in politics, but this is something that really interests me. It's like it's like on the Super Bowl Sunday, when to non-sports fans or something like that, when they see nothing on their timeline but recaps of some game that's going on or statistics or pontifications about certain teams' prospects of winning or something like that. I feel totally in the dark when those things happen, but I also understand why people get enthusiastic about it, and I make no judgments whatsoever. And it just turns out that for me, I'm as interested in the current political climate and world history and U.S. history. I'm as interested in those things as many people are in the Super Bowl. So if I don't judge you for getting really excited about a sports game, I would turn around and ask you not to judge me for being very curious and invested in what's going on right now. And I hope some of you guys take that to heart. And here's the other thing too, is like most of the time when people comment on a YouTube video, it's not because they're disagreeing. It's because most of the people that already agree with you, if they're watching a YouTube channel, they're not going to take the time to leave a comment most of the time. You are way more likely to leave a comment on a YouTube video if there's any kind of political discussion whatsoever if you disagree with someone. And I think I understand that, but from a creator's point of view, sometimes it gives the false impression that there are more people that disagree than don't. So yeah, that's my little rant. I figured I would let you guys in on that little part of my life, and I hope you found it insightful, and I hope that something ignites a spark in each and every one of you guys that makes you very curious about the world around you and why it is the way that it is. Because I think that's a worthwhile endeavor. I think that's a worthwhile thing to pursue in terms of knowledge seeking. And yeah, that's my little shtick. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you guys later.
Go